While you were sleeping, going about your morning routines, or drinking your coffee, the world quietly, without the wail of sirens or breaking news banners, moved one step closer to World War III. And contrary to all analyst predictions, this didn't happen in the scorching sands of the Middle East, nor in the jungles of South America, nor even in the contested waters of the Taiwan Strait. It happened in the icy, piercing silence of the North Atlantic, where the sky merges with gray waves and the horizon is shrouded in fog. Imagine the situation: a cold morning, international waters, a massive oil tanker sailing under the Russian flag. American warships approach it, the order to seize is given, special forces prepare to board. But this is only the visible tip of the iceberg, because somewhere out there in the dark depths, hidden by the crushing weight of the ocean, Russian nuclear submarines are watching this scene unfold. Their sonar operators are catching every sound of propellers, and their torpedo tubes may already be flooded. This is not a scenario from a new Tom Clancy techno-thriller, nor is it the figment of a Hollywood screenwriter's imagination. This is the harsh reality that occurred this morning. This is an incident that most people will scroll past in their social media feeds, but how we and the rest of the world handle this situation in the coming hours and days will decide a fundamental question. Will we preserve international law as a system of checks and balances, or will we finally slide into the chaos of the rule of the strong, where the one with the biggest caliber is right? Let's cast aside emotions and dissect exactly what happened in the strategically vital square of waters between Iceland and Scotland in the so-called Gjök Gap, which during the Cold War was the main arena of confrontation between NATO and Soviet fleets. The United States Coast Guard, acting with the support of the Navy, intercepted a large tonnage vessel named the Marinara. To the layperson, this name means absolutely nothing, just another tanker transporting hydrocarbons. It sounds harmless, routine. But do not be deceived by this external simplicity. This ship is a professional maritime shapeshifter, a veteran of shadow operations, a vessel with a rich and dark biography. Previously, in professional maritime intelligence briefings, it appeared under the name Belawan. This ship is a classic representative of the so-called Shadow Fleet. According to American and British intelligence, this ship has spent years transporting illegal sanctioned oil. It served the interests of Iran, helped finance the activities of Hezbollah, and has now become a tool in the hands of other players. The operating scheme of such vessels is simple to the point of genius and has been honed for years. It is a true shell game on a global scale. Captains turn off their automatic identification systems, AIS, and a massive tanker simply vanishes from civilian monitoring radars. While the transponder is silent, the crew repaints the hull, changes the name on the stern, and rewrites the ship's logs. In international waters, ship-to-ship transfers of oil occur to hide the true origin of the cargo. Today you sail under the flag of Panama. Tomorrow you are a law-abiding Liberian. The day after, a vessel from Sierra Leone. Documents change in the ports of compliant jurisdictions faster than the weather in the Atlantic. But this time, the stakes were raised exponentially. The game changed. The vessel no longer hid behind the flags of convenient small nations. The Marinara raised the state flag of the Russian Federation. Its tanks were sloshing with thousands of tons of Venezuelan oil, cargo under a strict American embargo. This was a challenge. Russia, Venezuela, and their partners were essentially saying, "We will transport this oil openly, under the protection of a nuclear power, and you will do nothing." American command did not make this decision spontaneously. Analysts in Washington decided, enough playing cat and mouse, enough allowing the Shadow Fleet to mock the sanctions regime. The order for a physical interception was given. The Coast Guard cutter Monroe approached alongside, and an armed boarding team climbed onto the deck of the Marinara, effectively seizing control of a sovereign state's vessel in international waters. And this is where the story stops being just a police report about fighting smugglers. This is where high-stakes geopolitics with the scent of gunpowder begins. The Russians knew we were coming. An operation of this scale in the North Atlantic could not have gone unnoticed by satellite and electronic intelligence assets. According to the Wall Street Journal, citing sources in the Pentagon, Moscow had dispatched its naval assets to this area in advance. We are not talking about a mere patrol boat. Reports indicate the presence of warships and, most alarmingly, at least one multi-purpose nuclear submarine that was covertly escorting this tanker. Think about the gravity of the moment. These are not training maneuvers. We are seizing a vessel carrying Russian citizens under the gun sights of torpedo tubes belonging to a nuclear power whose doctrine allows the use of force to protect its ships. The captain of the American cutter giving the order to board knew that somewhere beneath the keel of his ship an enemy submarine could be lurking. Any sudden movement, any misinterpreted sonar signal, any accidental shot could have provoked a retaliatory strike. This is no longer just about enforcing economic sanctions. This is a direct naval confrontation between two superpowers. We have crossed a line where diplomatic notes are replaced by the language of force. The reaction from Moscow was predictably instantaneous and furious. The Kremlin has already issued a series of statements. They are not making excuses for the oil. They have gone on the offensive. Russian diplomats and military officials are shouting about state piracy. They demand the immediate return of the vessel and crew, threatening adequate retaliatory measures. And the most unpleasant thing for Washington is that in this verbal skirmish, the Russians hold a powerful trump card. It isn't missiles or tanks, it is a document. They are brandishing the 1982 United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, UNCLOS. This is the Constitution of the Oceans, the document that regulates all navigation on the planet. And there, in black and white, in articles that any naval cadet knows, it is written, in the high seas, ships are subject to the exclusive jurisdiction of the state under whose flag they sail. No other state, with rare exceptions related to slave trading or piracy in the classical sense, has the right to stop, inspect, and especially arrest ships under the flag of a sovereign state, even if you really dislike their cargo, even if that cargo violates your domestic laws. Thus, a tactical victory, the seizure of a tanker with illegal oil, threatens to turn into a strategic nightmare. We have backed ourselves into a situation where, in trying to punish a rule breaker, we risk becoming known as the primary destroyers of those very rules. The irony of the situation is so palpable you can almost touch it. Russia, a country that in recent years, through its actions in Ukraine, has effectively trampled, rewritten, and thrown into the dustbin of history numerous norms of international law, a country that has violated principles of territorial integrity and sovereignty, is now casting itself in the role of the chief, almost saintly defender of legality at sea. This is hypocrisy of the highest order, cynicism raised to an absolute. Hearing lectures from Moscow about the sanctity of borders and jurisdictions is like listening to a lecture on fire safety from an arsonist. But let's put emotions aside and be honest with ourselves. In the mirror of geopolitics, America's reflection right now does not look flawless. If the United States starts seizing foreign vessels in international waters, relying exclusively on its own domestic laws, sanctions acts of Congress or executive orders, rather than mandates from the UN Security Council, we are single-handedly opening a Pandora's box. We are creating a precedent, and in international law, a precedent is the most dangerous weapon. If we are allowed to seize a Russian tanker for transporting Venezuelan oil because it threatens our interests, then what happens tomorrow? Tomorrow, China, citing this case, will seize an American merchant ship in the Pacific or the South China Sea. Beijing will declare that the vessel violates their domestic laws on national security or is carrying goods that threaten harmony. The day after tomorrow, Iran, inspired by the example of the superpowers, could close the Strait of Hormuz and begin arresting tankers of U.S. allies, accusing them of economic terrorism. We risk unraveling the very fabric of maritime order. We are sending a signal to the whole world. In the ocean, there are no longer universal rules. There is no UN convention. There is only the right of the strong. Whoever has the bigger fleet, whoever has the bolder special forces, that is who sets the law on a specific nautical mile. This is a path back to the 19th century, to the era of privateers and gunboats, only now the participants in the conflict have nuclear weapons. What scares me most about this story is not even the fact of the seizure itself, but how it was done. Style matters. Where is the broad international coalition? Where are the resolutions? Where is the long, albeit boring, diplomatic preparation? We are seeing a practically unilateral action by the U.S. Yes, there are reports of some support from the British, our loyal allies, but this does not look like a united front of the global community. It looks like the impulsive gesture of a lone cowboy. The administration seems to be trying to flex its muscles at everyone at once, at the Maduro regime in Venezuela, at Putin in Russia, and at the Ayatollahs in Iran. The desire to demonstrate resolve is understandable. In politics, one cannot appear weak. But there is a line, thin as a razor's edge, between resolve and recklessness, between bravery and adventurism. The shadow fleet is a real, tangible problem. It is the circulatory system of modern dictatorships. It is through these rusty tankers with disabled transponders that billions of petrodollars flow, which then turn into missiles, drones, and repressive machines. This artery needs to be cut. There is no doubt about that. But when you try to sever this Gordian knot with an axe while surrounded by enemy submarines, you risk not just cutting yourself, you risk provoking a chain reaction that will be impossible to stop. Military history is full of examples where wars began not because of a planned invasion, but because of an accidental incident, because of a single shot fired by a nervous captain in conditions of uncertainty. Right now, in these minutes, while the Marinara is sailing under convoy or lying dead in the water, we are at a bifurcation point. History could proceed along one of several scenarios, and none of them are simple. The first scenario is escalation. Russia decides to respond to force with force, initiating reciprocal detentions or creating threats to shipping. This is the path to direct war. The second scenario is legal collapse. The case goes to an international tribunal, and the U.S. loses it because formally, the letter of the law, the 1982 Convention, is on the side of the flag of registration. This would be a colossal blow to America's reputation as a guarantor of law. The third scenario is chaos. The world silently accepts the new rules. Might makes right. Insurance companies skyrocket prices, logistical chains crumble, global trade slows down because no one can guarantee the safety of cargo. Or, and this is the fourth option, we will have to urgently right now find a complex diplomatic exit, to find a way to put the genie back in the bottle, perhaps through quiet negotiations, an exchange, or formal concessions to save face for both sides. Sanctions must work, that is an axiom. Economic pressure is the best alternative to war, but instruments of pressure must not become the detonator for a global explosion. We have forgotten the main lesson of the Cold War. Coexistence requires clear red lines and understandable rules of the game. If the rules stop applying to superpowers, they instantly stop applying to everyone else, from Somali pirates to regional powers. And then the world ocean, which connects our economies and continents, will turn from a common road into a very dangerous, dark place where only the strongest survive. And I am not sure we are ready for such a world.